Here is a quick look at CSS assignment number 2. This is what we're working on today. And once again, I've sent out an email that will have some links in it that you would need to do this. And here it is. There is a handout that I have prepared. I'm going to download that real quick and open that up real quick. The only thing that's really different today from yesterday is we're going to look at some new property items that you can do in CSS. So if you look at the handout that is attached to the email, there are 5 different rule sets that you have to write. And there are, and I'll zoom in on that a little bit, there are 5 different rule sets: H1, H3, an unordered list, an image, and paragraphs. You have to write those. Could do some other things if you wanted to, but you have to write. Those are what's required. And then also here are the properties that we're going to work with. So it's 5 rule sets and 7 properties. Some of these properties we did not talk about at all yesterday. FontFamily, we didn't do that at all. And all of these border properties, like border style, border color, border radius, border width, those are all new today, so I'd like for you to try them out. Now, if I roll this handout on down, you'll see that you can, if you wish, you can use some of the things that we did yesterday. They're not required, but you certainly could. And also, as you're working with CSS, a lot of times you just discover properties that you can work, that you just kind of figure out what they do. And that's okay too. You could do that if you want. You could include some things that you just figured out. There's nothing wrong with doing that. I've got an example of a rule set here and just reminders. So I'm going to go kind of a fast run through of some of this. It's 5 rule sets and 7 different properties, right? So back on the email, if you look for this email that has to do with CSS number 2, I'll click that link, and then I'm going to do view code down at the bottom. This one's about sharks. I wrote it. All right, so one thing I want to show you today in this is this statement right here that's in the index.html. This is in the HTML page. And what it does is make a connection between the HTML and the CSS. All right, this CSS page is connected to the index.html because of this link right here. And it says the link, the relationship between those two is a style sheet, and the style sheet has a name, and it is called style.css, and that's what's in this statement right here, and that's what makes these two things work together. That's what makes it so that if I make a rule set over here on style.css, it has an effect on the HTML. All right, if this link wasn't in there, it wouldn't work. And we'll talk more about that as we get into some other assignments. All right, so anyway, let's go over to the style.css and let's go to work here. All right, so one of the things that we have to do is we have to create a rule for H1. All right, so I'm just going to put H1 right there. I'm going to start a set of curly brackets. This is like what we did yesterday. I'm going to press enter a little bit. I'm going to close the curly brackets. I'm using my arrow key to come up. I'm up at about line number 8 on code.org's web lab here. And I'm just going to start putting in some properties. Remember, properties are like this. Color is a property. And I put a colon right there. And if I want to say, I don't know, I'm just going to try to use something kind of bright. I'll say color red. Red is a value. It's considered a value. Let's do orange red just for kicks and giggles. All right, there we go. And I'll put a semicolon right there. So that's how you make one of these property and value combinations. You put in the property, you put a colon, you put in the value, you put a semicolon. Now, I'm going to add something else to this. I'm going to do, this is one of the new ones, font-family. All right, font-family, and I'm going to put a colon right there. And then I could pick any of these things that pop up, right? And I'll try cursive. I don't know what that's going to do for sure, so I'll try cursive, and I'll put a semicolon. And if you look at the HTML, the font did change. It kind of looks like Comic Sans, I believe. All right, what else might I do? I could do text-align. This is one we did yesterday. I don't think this is on the required list today, but maybe I want to center that. So I'll do text-align, and I will center it. So I have written a rule for the H1. Yay, all right? So another thing you have to do, if you look at the handout, and once again I could pull that up here, another rule I have to write is for an H3. Now if you look at the HTML code that's in there, there's some H2s and there's some H4s. You could write rules for H2s and H4s, but it's not required. You don't have to. But I'm going to make a rule for the H3. So I'll do H3, curly bracket, close the curly bracket, get up here in the middle of the curly brackets, and let's start doing something to it, shall we? All right. So I'm going to use font-size and colon, and this is done in pixels. So I'm going to make it like 24px semicolon. All right, and so that made the font a little bit bigger. I might also use FontFamily here and colon, and let's go mono. No, I'm going to do sans serif, and I'll do a semicolon right there. And I might also do background dash color, and I'm going to add a background color like I think I'll do dark green. Dark cyan sounds fun. And I might also just do this. I'll put a semicolon right there, and one more thing for these H3s, and that's going to be color, and I'm going to use this antique white. And again, if you were to inspect my, I'll put a semicolon right there to finish that. If you were to inspect my HTML, now the H3s, and I can show you over here, but the H3s have that background color, they have the antique white text color, the font has been changed, all those things, all those rules that I wrote have taken effect. All right, so let's move on. We also have to do a rule for images. Oh my goodness. So I'm going to go img. That's the image tag, right? And I put a set of curly brackets and a closing set of curly brackets. Let me roll that up just a little bit. And I'll come up into the middle of that. Now what I'm going to do for the images, I'm going to use a lot of that border stuff. The border things are required for today, right? So I'm first of all going to say border dash style, and I'll put a colon there, and there's a lot of choices: dash, dotted, double, groove, hidden, and if you scroll this menu that pops up on code.org, if you scroll it down, there's more. I'm going to put solid, and I'll put a semicolon right there. So I have a solid border around the picture. I will also change, just so we can see it a little bit better, I'm going to go border color, colon, let's do red so it pops out. Maybe we could even do that orange red that matches my text that I did earlier. And I'll do a semicolon right there. Let's do border dash width, and I'll put a colon there. And I can probably do pixels here. Let me see if I can do pixels here. I can. If I put 20 pixels, let's look over there at that picture of the basking shark. Oh my goodness, that's really thick, right? So I could do pixels, or they do have some settings like thick, thin, things like that. Maybe I'll take that down to 10 pixels, 10 px, put a semicolon right there, and you can see what's happening. If I go over here and show you, you can see what's happening to the, and it's all the images. Any image now has that kind of orange-red border around it. Let's also look at what border dash style does. I already did border style, sorry. Border dash radius, colon. Now border radius is done with pixels. All right, so you have to put in a number of pixels. I'm going to put in 10 pixels and a semicolon, and the thing that you'll notice if you look carefully is the corners of this thing got rounded a little bit, and you could round them a lot. I could put in 50 pixels if I wanted to, and look at what I've got now, and I don't think that looks terrible. I kind of like the rounded corners on the images, but that's you can make your own choices about the number of pixels and exactly how you do this. You put it together the way you want to. All right, so far looking at this, I've built a rule for the H1, I've built a rule for the H3, I've built a rule for the images. All right, yay. One of the things I have to build a rule for is paragraphs, right? I'm going to roll that up a little bit. So I'll put a curly bracket, and I'll close my curly bracket, and you don't have to do a ton. Maybe I want to do this. I'll do font family colon, and I'm going to do mono space, and maybe I'll put a semicolon there, and maybe I'll do font size, and I'll do let's go like 28px. Oh, that's too big. 28 pixels is too big. Let's go like 18px and semicolon there. So now my paragraphs are that monospace font, and they're 18 pixels, and you can see the result as you're building this. All right, so I don't think I'm gonna do really anything else with the paragraph. I think I'm happy with that. The only other thing left, the only other rule I have to write here is a rule for an unordered list, UL. And again, this is kind of getting down. I'm scrolling here so you can see this. Bracket, curly bracket, close curly bracket. All right, get in there. And I'm going to throw in some things for the unordered list. Font size, and let's do maybe 14px. All right, so that's slightly bigger. It's not a lot bigger. Maybe I'll do a border around this. Border style, colon, and shall we try like dashed? And if you look at my list now, I'll put a semicolon right there. My list and all of my list, if I scroll this through, every unordered list that I have is going to have that dashed border around it. That's what CSS does for you. I'm writing rules that will, and I misspelled size there. I got to fix that. There we go. That's better. And now that looks a little bit small. I'm going to go more like 18 pixels on my, I'll just change that. Okay, there we go. I could. Let's try this. Let's see if we like this. What if on my unordered list I did a background dash color? And you don't have to do everything just like me, but you do have to write rules for these different elements, and you also have to work in these different properties that I've talked about here. So maybe we go dark khaki. All right, there we go. So now all my lists have that dark khaki fill, right? Background, it's background color. And they have the dotted, or actually it's a dashed border around them. Yeah. So you see how this is coming together. Also remember one other thing you can do if you wish is you can come up to the top of the document, and the body rule was already up there. And so maybe I want to make this light gray. But that's up to you. You don't have to change the background color of the page, but you can by changing that background setting that's up in the body. Hey, look at that. So I have styled this thing up quite a bit, and I've used these new things that we talked about, like FontFamily and border style, border color, border width, border radius. I've used all those new ones, plus I've used some of the ones that we used yesterday. So there you go. That is what we're working on here today. This will, remember, you'll have to hit remix to be able to edit this. I think I forgot to do that at the start, but when you first open my code, you'll have to hit remix to be able to edit, and then you can go to work on doing whatever editing you want to do. I'll be able to see it because it's a project on code.org, so have at it. There you go.